Hey everyone, welcome to restorative practice. Today we are going to need a wall space or a chair to elevate the legs. And this might be a great practice to take into bed or use a couch because you can certainly do all of these shapes from those comfy places. And so we're going to start off using that wall space or that chair. And when we elevate our legs in this way, we're looking for the feet and the knees to be above the heart. So if you don't have wall space, it's really easy. No big deal. You can take that chair, that stool, and what I like to do is, if I'm going to use that, get my knees, the back of my knees, up to the edge of that chair or stool, because there's a little trigger at the back of the knees for the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest system. And ideally, that's the state that your nervous system gets to be in your restorative practice. Okay, and if you want to use that wall, I like to get into like a fetal position. All right, so I'll get my hips as close to the wall as I can, keeping in mind that we have our own limitations with tight hamstrings or tight glutes, tight back body. You just want to be mindful of that, right? So if you can, sit bones in contact with the wall and then kicking the legs up the wall, you can lengthen out here. One more option with legs up the wall, sometimes it can feel nice to place something underneath the base of the pelvis and a little bit of the low back. I think that feels better on my spine. You could try it if it works for you. You can keep it. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. And there's no shame in that. But it's really good to know what does and doesn't work for you, especially in restorative yoga practice, because we hold these shapes for so much longer than in a flow-like vinyasa class. So starting to settle into your first shape, again, it's elevating the feet and the knees above the level of the heart with either legs of the wall or legs draped over the edge of a chair or a stool. And then once you've got your bottom half in that position, then start to relax the shoulders away from the ears, kind of adjust the head and the neck so they're relaxed. I like to here roll my shoulders down my back like I would in shavasana, and then move my head side to side a little bit just so I can check in with the neck, the jaw, muscles of the face, and then eventually settling into something that feels good to hold still in. And that might mean you need to adjust the arms. I have my arms stretched out wide to the side. That feels good to me right now. You could also let your hands rest on your body. You could let your hands rest on your rib cage or your low belly. Right, so there's no right or wrong here. You're really just setting yourself up for some stillness. We're going to take a long hold. To start us off, we'll be in this shape for about 3.5 more minutes. And as you settle in here, maybe closing the eyes. And if it feels good to close the eyes, great. If it doesn't feel good to close the eyes, if you want to keep them open, maybe try softening the gaze a little bit, like let your gaze be less focused on anything in particular. Kind of like that sense of lowering the lids halfway so everything becomes a little bit fuzzy around the edges. From that space of softening the eyes or closing the eyes, can you relax the tissue around the eyes? space between the eyebrows, above the eyebrows, the eye sockets themselves. And once that feels like it's softening, it's releasing, start to bring the awareness to your breath. And without making any attempt to control your breath, just kind of notice the breath first. You might notice a tendency to breathe through the mouth. You might notice a tendency to breathe through the nose, or a combination of those two. And then you might start to notice where the breath goes to in the torso. Maybe it goes towards the chest or the throat. Maybe you really feel your breath in your rib cage or your belly. And as you're noticing your breath, the qualities and the characteristics of your breath, maybe start to slow it down a little bit. So you take a little bit more air in when you're inhaling. And maybe it takes you a little bit longer to completely exhale. Here we'll take about 3 more deep belly breaths, if that's where your breath is going. And if it's not, like if you're still breathing up into the chest or the rib cage, for these last 3 breath cycles, can you start to focus on breathing into the belly? Okay. So as we start to transition out of this shape, I want you to take your time, and if you want to stay longer in legs up the wall, you could spend your entire class in this shape and you'd be getting so many benefits. So feel free to stay if you like. Now, if you want to come out, we're going to spend our transition in fetal position. Maybe if you got your legs up the wall, you might want to scoot away from the wall a little bit. And we'll just spend a few breath cycles on our sides. So the side that you're rolling onto, you can use that bicep like a little pillow. You could actually slide a pillow underneath the head. So just supporting the head. And take a pause here in fetal position. You might notice a new sensation in the legs, in particular in the feet, especially if you had your legs stretched up against the wall. It's really common to feel kind of a tingling sensation as the blood rushes back in. Let's take one more breath here in fetal position. And then we'll press up and we're going to lengthen out. We're going to need a little bit more space. So we'll come away from the wall, or we can set our chair off to the side. And so because in our vinyasa practices, if you've been practicing vinyasa for the past couple of weeks, we've been focusing on the splits, which means we lengthen the top of one thigh and we lengthen the bottom of the opposite thigh. We're working with those concepts here too in our restorative practice. So what we just did with legs up the wall or legs over the chair is the very gentle lengthening of the backs of the thighs. Now we'll focus on the front of the thighs. I'm going to give you a couple different options to create that sensation in your body for this next shape, because we want to be mindful of knee joints and ankle joints. Like for example, right now, I'm turning to the side so you can see what I'm doing. You see that I can get my ankle flat, so the top of my foot's flat on the mat and my toes are pointing straight back behind me, versus flexing my foot and my toes pointing off to the side. So just try that here. And now if you're someone that, because of ankle mobility, your foot kind of looks more like this, that's something you want to pay attention to and not force yourself into. Okay, so if this is you with the ankle kind of flexed and not able to get flat yet, here's an option for you. To lengthen the top of the thighs, we're going to bypass the mobility of the ankles and the knees. Come down to our back, slide a prop or two underneath the base of the pelvis, and extend our legs forward. Okay, really simple way to just access the hip flexors. And that's option number one, especially if ankle mobility is an issue and knee mobility is an issue. If your knees and your ankles are feeling pretty healthy, here's an option for you. And just because your knees and your ankles are healthy doesn't mean you have to take this option. You can certainly take option number one, but half Virasana, Supta Virasana, half Hero's pose. Okay, so when I'm taking this shape, I'm setting my sits bones down inside. Let's say we have our right ankle back first. My sits bones are on the mat inside of my right ankle. So I'm not sitting on my foot. Okay, I'm sitting on the mat. The left leg, or whichever leg you're not bending, it can extend forward. Okay, and I can lean back here into my forearms. What I'm going to do though is take some props underneath the spine so that I don't have to go so far to lie back. If you're like here and you're seated and you already feel your knee joint and your ankle joint talking to you a lot, like sharpshooting pain, I wouldn't take it any further. I'd actually add some height underneath your sits bones. Okay, or you could take that first option. If you're feeling like I can lean back into this, building that support system underneath you, like multiple pillows, couch cushions, even leaning back on the edge of your chair or your couch with your forearms is great. You could also lean back against a wall. Okay. And so we are going to be in this first side for those of us taking Supta Virasana for about 3 minutes, which means those of us in that first option with the lift underneath the pelvis, you're going to get a nice long hold. About 6 minutes in total for you there. But remember, if you have your legs extended out in that position, it's kind of like a supported bridge. You can always bend your knees and plant your feet. One more thing I'll say about both of these shapes, whichever option you're taking, and then I'll let us be in silence for a little bit. The last thing I want to call your attention to though here is the low back. Just like as in our vinyasa practice when we're moving towards something like the splits, you are placing yourself into a little bit of a back bend. And so if that feels like it's way too much on the low back, the lumbar spine, one, it's normal, and two, it's not something you have to suffer through. So probably you want to just add more support, especially in Supta Virasana, the shape that I'm in right now, especially if the low back's really achy it's uncomfortable, it's not something you can hold still in, you want to sit up. You want to add more support underneath the spine so you're not lying back as much. Okay, so let's start to come back to our breath here. Again, noticing the quality and the characteristic of the breath. And starting to lengthen out the breath, a little bit more air in. Takes you longer to fully inhale. And same thing on the exhale, takes you a little bit longer to fully exhale. So if you're in Supta Virasana with one knee bent back, have about 2 more breaths. Again, if you're lying on your back with some prop underneath the base of the pelvis, feel free to stay there about 3 more minutes in that shape. If you're changing sides in Supta Virasana and you're all the way back on your back, rolling to the side of the leg that's extended forward is usually easiest to free the leg that was just bent. Okay, and then you can give yourself a couple minutes to kind of shake that out. And then we'll bend the opposite knee. Check out that ankle because not each side might feel totally different. So if that ankle is not getting flat, if you can't point the toes back behind you, if you feel the inclination to flex the foot, that's going to put, I think, in my opinion, a little bit too much torque, a little bit too much stretch on the knee joint itself. I'm not really looking to stress the knee joint that much, although there are some times and you know, reasons that we would want to stress the joints themselves. There is a little bit of stress on the knee joint. And we do need stress in our body. Like there is stress on us in our physical bodies inherently because there is gravity. So stress isn't always a bad thing, but we just want to be mindful of stretch sensation around ligaments and joints because they are not as elastic as muscles. They don't bounce back like muscles do. If you're in that Supta Virasana, make sure you've got the appropriate height of support, and you can always add more height underneath the spine. You can always take height away too if you're finding that you're wanting to lean back more. Really key in your yoga practice in general, and your yoga asana practice in general, is the willingness to explore and kind of approach this with curiosity, with a gentle inquiry. The time that you spend on your mat becomes this time as if you were a scientist in a laboratory. The time that we spend in stillness is an invitation to follow the breath, to use the breath as an anchor, and to let the mind wander, because that's what it does. It's the function of the mind. And notice when you get stuck in a storyline, when you notice that, coming back to the breath as the anchor, that's the success. Can you do that gently though, without chastising yourself? Just, oh, there's that thought again. Oh, there I go again. Maybe smile at yourself even. And then you just simply bring your attention back to the breath. This inhale and this exhale. Okay, so we have about 2 more deep breaths in this shape, whatever shape you're in right now. 2 more breaths. If you're in Supta Virasana, lying on your back with one knee bent back, really gentle on your exits. I like to press into my forearms and elbows. And then as I come up, I'll roll onto that leg that's extended forward, that hip, so that I can take all the weight off of the D of the bent knee leg and then extend it forward. And if you're lying on your back with that support underneath the pelvis, you can lift up the hips and move that out of the way, hug the knees into the chest, just kind of resetting the body, finding something neutral. And then, so the next thing we're going to do is a variation of a twist. We've done this many times before if you're familiar with our restorative practice. We're going to create 2 90-degree angle shapes in the knee. I'm going to roll onto my right hip. So if you're still on your back, you're going to need to sit up for just a moment. I'm going to roll all the way onto my right hip. My left knee is just kind of right behind the sole of my right foot. And both of my legs are making these 2 90-degree shapes. Then I'm going to want to pull a support system like a couch cushion or some pillows up against my right hip. I turn and frame that out with my hands, and then I lower my belly, my chest, and my right cheek to that cushion. So some of us are going to want more support than others. And so you're just always practicing, noticing what your body's asking for, honoring your body's edges, seeing where you can find some stillness. And then coming back to the breath. We're just going to spend about a minute on each side. I want us to have some time for shavasana. Relax your shoulders here, soften your jaw here. Deep belly breaths. Let's take one more breath here on this side. And you can press into your hands to lift your chest up. We'll unwind the spine and we'll switch sides. So easiest way to do that would just be to roll off to that left hip. Make those 2 90-degree angle shapes with the legs. You can adjust your cushion towards that left hip, turn and frame it out with your hands, and then lowering down to the belly, to the chest, and the left cheek. And we'll take about 1 minute here. Back into that deep belly breath as you settle into stillness. Let's take one more breath here. And then when you're ready, you can press into your hands, lift up, unwind the spine. We're going to set up for our final shavasana. We're going to have about 3 minutes for shavasana. You can take your legs back up the wall, same way we started our practice. You can sit in an upright seated meditation if you like. You can simply lengthen out on your back. You know, you always have these options. I think it's so helpful to hear reminders because we get kind of stuck in the what it's supposed to look like mentality, and we forget, oh, I don't have to do that. I can listen to my body. So please do listen to your body. Add any props. Okay. And if you're coming down to your back, roll the shoulders down the back. Maybe slightly tilt the chin into the chest. If you're seated upright, you might just kind of shift back and forth. See if you can feel your hips begin to stack on top of the shoulders and the ears stack on top of the shoulders. I had that backwards. If you were upside down, that might work, but I imagine you're not. So the idea is that you're aligning the spine, right, in your seat. If you're laying on your back, the spine is naturally in alignment. Let's take a deep breath in together as we settle in. Deep breath out through the mouth. And let's try that twice more. Inhaling through the nose. And exhaling through the mouth. And one more time. Inhaling. With an open mouth, exhale. Letting everything soften. Let it go. Let it rest. Shavasana. Please feel free to stay longer in Shavasana. You need to move on with your day. Just gently start to deepen the breath, adding movement to fingertips to toes. You can move your head side to side. If you're coming from your back body, you might begin to roll off to a side. And then we'll close out our practice, if you like, by joining me in an upright seat, letting that seat be supported and comfortable. And then here's where we line the spine again, shoulders over hips, ears over shoulders. Deep breath in, grow tall. Deep breath out, settle. Just take a few moments here to follow that breath. You can close out your practice with me by bringing your hands together to your heart. Find the chin in to the chest, honoring the sacred wisdom of the heart space as a reminder that you are alive. You know, you're here right now, you're doing this work. And just taking a moment to acknowledge that with reverence and gratitude for the practice. To all of our teachers, past, present, future, to the teacher within your own heart. Namaste, yogis. Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your practice. If you have any comments, questions, I always love to hear from you. So just as a reminder, you can reach out to me via email anytime. It's tessa@tessatovar.com. And I hope you take care of yourselves. I hope you come back again soon. See you later.